How's it going, everyone? This is Rosalind, and today we're going to be taking a look at the latest trial, Ultros Typhon Reborn. Before I get into it, I just want to say this is probably the worst design trial in the entire game, and I hate it. So because of that, you'll be getting footage from my live stream, where I did this live on Twitch, because I refuse to ever do this fight again for recording, so sorry. Anyways, this is the party I ended up doing the fight with when I did the battle. Some of the stuff here is set up for a different physical attacker, but I'll mention that when I get to it. And let's get into the gearing here. This is how I have my Wilhelm set up. Basically, high stats, HP, and spirit are some of the most important, but then also lightning resistance. So you can see here he has a pretty decent amount of lightning resistance. Wind is good too, but the wind damage in this battle, I found it to be negligible. I've heard people say you need wind resistance. I found it to be, you don't need it. I do earth for preemptive attack, and then fire for Typhoon's attacks. Water is good too, but I'm getting most of my water resistance from focus buffs. Then I use CG Nickel, and he's obviously my buffer, but I also have him set up with Calamity Border for more elemental resistance throughout the fight. As you can see, here's his elemental resistances. Again, lightning being really the main one you want, and wind not really an issue. I honestly don't even know if there's any wind damage in the fight to begin with. And then I used Satan. I originally had my group set up for Axter, which is why you'll see when I get to... actually, this is why I have Holy Wand on Nichols, because I meant to use Holy from him, but ended up not needing to do it because I ended up killing Typhoon quick enough. But here's how I have my Axter set up. As you can see, I give him Rainbow Robe and whatnot for elemental resistances, mainly for lightning resistance being the big one. And then I also give him the Trial Reward because this provides extra damage to Aquan creatures. And then I give him this. This is Lunaria's Trust Mastery, 100% extra damage against demons. This is good for Typhoon. And that's also why I have him set up with Diablos, to help take out Typhoon quicker, because the hardest part of the fight is when you fight the two of them together. And then my main healer is Volka. That's how I have her set up. She doesn't have as high of lightning resistance, and she doesn't really need it because she has such high spirit, so she's generally just fine. But her main job is, she's, again, just like the last trial, she is a huge MVP thanks to being able to do buff water and, heal while also putting up buffs on people, or putting up shields, and by being able to restore MP. So she is fantastic for this fight. And then I went with Bosch, and I was trying for a while using a 2 healer strategy, but I found a 2 tank strategy to be safer, at least for me. And this is the setup I have him on. Lightning resistance on him. Rest of the stuff is really not really that important. And then I gave him this weapon again that I used during the Gilgamesh trial to hit wind and earth damage. And the thinking was I was going to be using Axter, and he wasn't going to be able to hit those elements, and I was going to use these for phase 2 to seal Typhoon's attacks. But ended up not being necessary. So, yeah, ended up going with that. And that's sort of the look at my party. When we get into the fight, it's going to be, again, it's going to be cut from footage from my live stream. I'm going to be either cutting it down or speeding up parts of it in order to make it go by quicker. And I will be dubbing over a commentary track where I'll be kind of talking about why, and basically talking about the fight. So we will get into that shortly. Okay, let's get into this abomination of a fight. So as you see here, Ultros does a preemptive attack. The preemptive attack is earth-based, and this is the primary reason why I equipped earth element on all my characters. And then from here, it's just repetition. So going over kind of how Ultros works throughout this fight, at least for 1.5 of his health bars, basically, for this entire first phase, and then 50% of his health bar through the second fight. He has a couple of things he does. One, he'll switch between being immune to magic damage and immune to physical damage, and as far as I can tell, there's no way to control which one he goes to. He'll get a little message at the top of the screen. It'll say if he's immune to magic or immune to physical. You can also check his buffs to see which one he's immune to. Whichever one he's immune to, he takes no damage from it, no matter what. You can get around this by using hybrid damage, but I didn't because I wanted physical damage to take care of Typhoon in the second phase, because that's the most dangerous part of the fight, is the beginning of the second phase when they're both up. Now, as for the other thing he switches between, is he will switch between what elements he is strong against and what elements he is weak against. Now, he will always absorb water damage, so you never want to use water damage against Ultros. However, he'll go ahead and put up different buffs on himself. I think it is a wind and light, and then a fire and something else are the two debuffs he'll place on himself, and he'll switch between the two. I've heard that there's a way to control this. I'm not exactly sure how it is, and I was never able to figure it out and confirm how it works. But just before you ever are going to attack him, just make sure you check whatever he is weak against and use those elements. Now, if you don't, you can attack him. So, like, say he places a fire resistance buff on himself if he's in that particular phase. You can reduce his fire resistance and deal damage to him that way. The buff he places is not that big. I know with Axter's fire resistance and ice resistance debuff, I was able to still deal fire resistance to him at one point, but you're just better off using the elements he's weak against, obviously for more damage. So the whole point of this fight here, what I do is I set up Wilhelm to single target provoke everything, because the majority of what the boss does that is physical damage is all going to be provocable, with the exception of counterattacks, and I'll get to that in a second. The other thing I like to do is just make sure I am running the water resistance buff from Volca and running Calamity Border from Nickel, and this just helps lower damage around the board. You will notice a few times he'll do like a little tornado, or he'll do these things where he drops rocks on you, and you may think that those are like wind damage or earth damage, but they are not. They are actually a percentage of your HP. So when those two abilities come in, you could be at like 100 HP and they won't kill you. Here's one right now that's happening, the big tornado. That deals a percentage of your HP, so it can't actually kill you. So you don't really have to worry about that, but you do want to heal up, obviously. Another thing Ultros will do, whenever he's doing his normal physical attacks with his tentacles, he will drain the MP of whoever he's targeting. Now this is important because while you can provoke the damage if it's just a single target regular attacks, you can't redirect the MP drain, and this comes into play with counterattacking. So whenever you attack Ultros with either magic or physical, he will counter whoever attacked. And so what I usually do is, in order to make sure Wilhelm doesn't die and keep him alive, whenever I'm in a phase where I can actually attack Ultros, I actually switch Bosch over to cover. So he takes the damage, and that lowers the damage that goes to Wilhelm. I had a few times where things would come closer. Wilhelm actually died when I wasn't using 2 tanks, and that's why I switched to this, or one of the reasons I switched to this. And what will happen is, like, Bosch will go and he'll cover, and he'll take all the damage, but for instance my attackers, in this case Satans, they'll still lose MP. And this happens every single time. There's nothing you can do about it. And because of this, Volca is very, very good for this fight, because she can just spot heal MP whenever you need her to. A few other things to watch out for, as you can just see right there. Ultros will recover HP every now and then. It's like 3,000. It's like 3 million HP in phase 1. It's 4 million in phase 2. It's not too big of a deal, but it does happen. The other thing you really need to watch out for is when you get below 50%, or maybe it's 40%, but I think it's 50%, I can't remember. Ultros will start occasionally berserking one of the people in your party. I think there's a specific target for it. I read that it's the highest attack unit in your party, but you can draw this with Provoke. This is one of the other reasons why I switched to a 2-tank strategy, because I would have times where he would, and I've sped up the video here, but I would have times where he would go physical vulnerable, so he'd be magic immune, and I'd be like, all right, cool, I'm ready to attack, and he would have also berserked my tank, and then I couldn't attack, because if I were to attack, my 2 Satans would get just absolutely destroyed by the counterattack, and they would die instantly. But if I were to just dispel him, I would have to wait a whole nother turn. But even then, after dispelling him, there's a chance that, like, just his normal regular attacks would start killing off people in my party, and it wasn't working out good. I tried a strategy where I gave Wilhelm just 100% draw attacks, but that lowered his overall defenses too much, and he wasn't able to survive phase 2 because of that. So I just eventually switched to a 2-tank strategy, and it solved much of my problems. I will talk about the reasoning, the final reasoning, and what actually was the final draw for why I switched to a 2-tank strategy when we get to phase 2. But I'm just going to go ahead and let this play out, and I will get into phase 2, and we're about to get to that point. Okay, we're getting closer to the end here, so I'm going to go ahead and start getting into the explanation about what's going to happen in Phase 2. So when we kill Ultros for the first time, we're going to transition into Phase 2, and he's going to respawn along with Typhoon. And things get really ridiculous from here. First of all, you're going to take another preemptive attack. This time it's only going to be from Typhoon, but it's going to be much, much more deadly. It's going to be a non-elemental magic attack, so you want to have your spirit and HP very high. And then he will also deal a very high damage thunder element attack at the same time, and these will both happen before you can really do it as a preemptive attack. Most likely your physical attackers or anyone with low spirit are going to die, and in my case I believe both Satans die. After that happens, you'll have one turn as sort of preparation. mean, you're still going to take damage from the two, but you're going to have one turn to get ready, get people rezzed and buffed and whatnot. And then starting from turn 2, you're going to want to start using specific elements against Typhoon, because in a 3-turn rotation, so on turn 2, 3, 4, and then repeating after that until he dies, he is going to use a snort that is a 2-turn snort, followed by a snort that is a permanent snort, followed by an instant death that cannot be prevented. And that's on each consecutive turn. And it repeats. So what you want to do starting on turn 2 is you want to deal earth damage to Typhoon, and then on turn 2, or on the 3rd turn, you'll want to deal wind damage, and then on the 4th turn, you want to deal light damage. And you want to repeat that process from then on in order to basically prevent him from using those specific attacks against you. My original setup, and as you saw, I had the that weapon that dealt both wind and earth on Bosch, and I had the Holy Wand on Nigel. The reasoning for doing this was I was originally going to be using Axter, and I was just going to physically attack Typhoon for the earth and wind chances or turns with Bosch, and then use Nigel to cast Holy. And that was the original plan to deal with it, but because I switched to Satan, that ended up not being necessary, because Satan could handle everything but light. And also, I was able to kill Typhoon before I had to use light against him, so in this video I actually don't end up getting the elemental missions because of that. However, 2 Axters or 2 Satans can pretty easily deal with Typhoon, so unless your damage is really low, you shouldn't have to really worry about going through the rotation too many times. The other thing, and really the main reason I ended up switching to 2 tanks, is because of what happens on turn 4, and then every 5 turns thereafter that Typhoon is alive, and that is he will dispel as a single target dispel, and this will almost certainly go for your tank. I know some people put Golem and the Moogle plushie whatever shield on a different character, and they just had that character provoke, and then they just used their main tank just for cover. That way that character got dispelled. I wasn't able to find a way to work that into my party for my specific gear and characters. Just didn't work out for me, so I switched to 2 tanks, and I just covered with Bosch and used single target provoke with Wilhelm. So this strategy ended up taking care of a number of my problems by using these 2. The other thing you need to watch out for here is, obviously throughout this fight you do want to have ailment resists up on your characters. However, Typhoon will cast he'll cast these new type of debuffs I've never seen before that lower your ailment resistances. So even if you are immune to, say, poison, if a character gets a poison ailment resist placed on, or lowering debuff placed on them, they can still be poisoned, and he'll do this for every single debuff. Most of the time it's single target, he'll do one at a time, but if the fight goes long enough before you kill him, he does have a move that will lower your entire party's ailment resists to all ailments. So you do need to watch out for that. It is possible that even if you are immune to ailments, you will still get hit with those. But here I'm about to get Typhoon down pretty close, about 50ish%, and then on the following turn, which will be turn 4, which is when he would use the well, it's when you want to do light damage to him, so he does an instant death one of your characters, which would be my tank in this case, and it's also the turn he would be using the Dispel, but I will end up killing him here with 2 Satans using water, because unlike Ultros, you can actually deal water damage to Typhoon. Okay, and now for at least 50% of Ultros's health bar is the exact same as phase 1. He can be super trolly, he can stay in, like in my case, he can stay in physical immunity for 20 plus turns, which happens, and you just basically gotta wait and stay alive and take your few chances that you have to deal as much damage to him as you can. The only thing you're going to want to watch out for is once he gets under 50%, he'll have sort of like a pseudo berserk almost. Basically a number of abilities that he doesn't use up until that point become usable in his AI pool. And those moves are a lightning damage attack that hits very, very hard, and acid rain are two of the main attacks that get added. He has a couple other things. One's like a AoE. He does a bunch of different, like I think it's like up to 3 or 4 different ailments to you. But I mean, if you're immune to all the ailments, it doesn't really matter. And he also casts haste on himself, which allows him to attack more times per turn. That can be annoying, but it's not anything really to worry about. The main ones is really the two, acid rain and the lightning attack. And this is one of the main reasons I have everybody with a bunch of lightning resistance on them, is because then I also provide water resistance through Folka, and this allows them, for the most part, I have a few parts where people die from it, but for the most part it allows you to survive it. And he doesn't use it every single turn, but every few turns or so he will use those, and you know when it's going to happen because he'll use the lightning one first, and then at the very end of the turn, after he's done all his other attacks, he'll use the acid rain. And he always uses them as a set in the same turn, and he always uses them in addition to all his other attacks. So it's not like with Dark Ifrit and Dark Siren, where they used their little threshold or their little 5-turn attack, just that attack. Here, he uses his acid rain and his lightning attack in addition to everything else. So you really need to have buffs up, you really need to have damage shields up, you really need to be prepared to eat all that damage, because it will come in, and it can kill you very easily if you're not prepared for it. But other than that, the fight is the exact same all the way until the end. So I'm just going to let the video play out from here. As usual, if you have any questions, let me know in the comment section below. And if you want to see this fight completely unedited, like I have it here, and I have it highlighted on my Twitch channel. You can find the link to that in the description down below. Also, I left in, I think it's the last few minutes or so, I went ahead and left that unedited completely, so it'll be just as it was from the Twitch live stream where I had pulled all this footage from. I think you might enjoy some of the reactions. But anyways, I'm going to go ahead and cut the mic here and let you enjoy the rest of the video. You've got to be kidding me! Ugh! You've got to be fucking kidding me. He's still magic immune, so I can still do damage to him. Who'd you berserk? Okay, you berserked Wilhelm. What are you weak against? Fire. Thank fucking God. No, I'm just gonna kill him. I don't care how it is. Doesn't have to be pretty. He just died. Screw this boss. Just fucking die already. God. Hey Kanzaki, how long did we try this last